Hi, I'm Amber, and welcome to the MeetRx Success Story podcast. Today we have a special guest with us, Paul. Welcome, Paul.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, Paul, let's get down to it. What was your life and your health like prior to starting a meat-based diet? Were you having any issues?
Well, I wasn't so much having issues that I knew of, but my wife did. So I'll have to say, my wife and I had I would say we were on the healthy side of the standard American diet, right? So we did a lot of home cooking, very little processed foods, and we were happy, right? Neither of us had major problems until my wife broke her foot, we'll say about 7 years ago, and it healed in, a little longer than it normally would take, but it healed, and she was walking around on it, but the pain never went away. So she'd have this constant pain in her foot. It was very distracting for her, and she lived with that for 2 or 3, maybe even 4 years. So that was sort of the start of us thinking, what in the world, we should do something about this. Can we do anything about this? So that's sort of what it was like before. We ate fruits and vegetables just like everybody else, and I've always been a meat lover. So here's the big thing. This transition for me was easy. I love eating meat, and I'm also not picky, so it was super simple for me. So not so simple for my wife, but when the pain went away, that's when she decided to stick with it.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so Paul, when you first started the meat-based diet, how did you implement it? What did you include, and did you have any transitional issues?
Right. So the thing that sort of flipped us over to giving it a try is our massage therapist mentioned it to us because he had quite a deal of success with weight loss through carnivore, but he was also quite aware of the physiological effects of it. And when he heard about the pain that my wife was going through, he said, I think that's an inflammation issue. Why don't you try carnivore for a while? And she was willing to do just about anything. And I was on board, no problem. So we started. And within about 2 weeks, the pain in her foot went away. But then surprisingly, the pain also that she lived with for her whole entire life in her knees also went away. So every morning she would get up in the morning, and the normal would be walk down the stairs, click, clack, click, clack. Her knees would crack going down and it would hurt. And she couldn't squat down to the kids anymore and all this kind of thing. Anyway, with carnivore, she was like, oh, that is gone now. So that was sort of a surprising thing for her. For me, the transition period, again, like I said, was very easy. I just stopped eating vegetables, stopped eating fruit, stopped eating everything. I'm a researcher at heart, so I started researching it a lot, and I had some of the questions about, vitamins and minerals and these sorts of things, and I thought, what am I missing here? And I learned a lot about vitamin C and how you don't need as much on the carnivore diet and this sort of thing. Plus, I also dug into MeetRx and realized, oh, that's a great start. That's a great resource for people. So anytime I would tell people about this diet, at first they'd say I'm crazy. And then for sure, they'd have all their particular questions. Always send them to that website for sure, because everyone has their own physical issues. And there's that list on the website, and you just type in whatever your issue is, and boom, you got stories. So, you can't beat people's firsthand testimonials. So issues with the transition. So for myself, like I said, it was easy. For my wife, the lack of variety was a little bit of an issue. The other thing is we have 3 kids, and the kids would realize that, oh, mommy and daddy aren't eating ice cream anymore or cookies. And so they would always offer her, just have one little bit, right? So sort of just temptation kind of things, right? And my kids wouldn't help because they'd say, have some, mom, you deserve it. And she'd say, okay. And I'd say, no, right? Easy for me to say no. I've always said, no, give me another hamburger. I don't need a piece of cake. So the transition was quite easy for me. Let me just look at my notes because I do not want to forget anything. Oh, another thing was the financial aspect. So we started to look, like, meat isn't necessarily inexpensive, but then I came to discover that fruits and vegetables aren't inexpensive either. And so as we made the switch, obviously we bought a lot more meat and we bought way less fruits and vegetables. So it evened out in that way. And also through a lot of my research, a lot of people, especially new people to the diet, would ask, man, steak is expensive, and other cuts of meat are very expensive. And the advice from veterans that I heard over and over again was, eat what you can afford and enjoy. And I kind of took that to heart. So I became a avid flyer shopper. So I would look for ground beef on sale, and I would settle on a price, $2.99 per pound. That's what I want. And I would find it wherever it was. I would find it, and I would go and I would buy it, and I would stock up. And we bought another freezer. And actually, since we started about 2 years ago, I not only did I buy another freezer, but we got 2 half cows in that period of time, and filled up the freezers with beef. Yeah, and since this sort of the start of it, any transitional difficulties we had is sort of just tweaking it. And a lot of that tweaking is just learning new recipes. Again, researching a lot of things and realizing, okay, in fact, the reason that MeatRx reached out to me is because of a Facebook post where one little issue I had was something I never had before carnivore, what I have now is an itchy back. My back itches, and I don't know why. So I asked the question on one of the Facebook groups, and a whole bunch of people came up with ideas. Some people said, maybe allergy, maybe eggs, I'm not sure. And so it's not really terrible. I don't mind it. Everything else has been good. I'll also mention some of the surprising things that happened for me when we first implemented it. So my wife's pain went away, and I didn't realize it was a problem, but I snored. And I don't snore anymore. So that was something that went away. That was fantastic. And also headaches. And it certainly wasn't something I went into it hoping my headaches would go away, but they've all but gone away, basically gone for me. So yeah, we really had, other than my wife and the variety thing, it was a rather easy transition, I would say, from that diet to this.
Awesome. Okay, so could you go through like a typical day of what you eat?
Yeah, so my wife and I have eggs every morning. We still drink coffee. This is something I should mention. So the other thing, backing up a bit, I have always been about the same size as I am now. My pants have always been 32 my whole life, ever since high school. So I wasn't looking at it for weight loss. For me, it's delicious and I love it. The thing I did notice though, so people would tell me, oh, when you hit 25, that's when you'll start putting on weight. And then I hit 25. Oh, when you hit 30, that's when you'll start putting on weight. When I hit 30 and so on, right? Well, I'm now 47 and I still hadn't put on any weight, right? So still about the same weight as I've always been, which is I'm just lucky that way, right? But just before we went on carnivore, I did notice my belly button was a bit deeper than it used to be. So I was a little softer in the midsection, a little bit. And when I first made the transition over to carnivore, I would always have cream and sugar in my coffee. And I cut my sugar down from 2 to 1. And for about the first 4 months of carnivore, I still did that. Still put 1 sugar in my coffee. It wasn't until I dropped that last teaspoon of sugar in my coffee that my belly button got shallow again, if you will. That was one of the things. Okay, so that's on coffee. We have coffee and water. That's all we really drink. Eggs every morning. Sometimes we'll have bacon, sometimes sausage, sometimes some leftover ground beef or whatever. I really like eggs with ground beef. That's breakfast. That's every day. So between my wife and I and the kids, we go through a dozen eggs a day, basically, every single day. But we love eggs. And the only spice we put on them, salt. My wife will have cheese with her eggs. And then sometimes I'll skip lunch. Sometimes I'll have lunch, but it will be, it's a lot less structured. So I'll only focus on supper here. So at dinner time, usually ground beef is our side. So we'll have like a steak with ground beef, or pork chops and ground beef, or sausage and ground beef. Not every day, but that kind of thing. And we basically just stick to beef, pork, and chicken. I really like seafood, but my wife doesn't really prefer it, so we don't have it very often. And yeah, I mean, I'm very simple. I could eat just ground beef all the time. I'd be fine with it. But I know it's good to sort of diversify a little bit. So yeah, very, very simple. And whatever we make for supper, I'll take a little bit to work. And people at work will look at me funny because I only have meat. I've become known as the meat eater. But it's a good reputation to have, because a friend of mine at work said, "You're the guy, you're still just eating meat, 2 years into it." Yeah, still eating meat. He said, "I got some venison that's been sitting in my freezer for 6 months. Do you want it?" I'm like, "Yes, I do." And so he gave me like a cooler full of venison, which was awesome. And yeah, I'm happy to try any kind of meat that's available to me. So that's, yeah, I would say basically beef, pork and chicken is our staple, and we just stick to it. I'm a little bit more strict than my wife because the kids tempt her from time to time.
I can totally understand that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you kind of mentioned some of the improvements that you've made, but if you could go over it, just kind of bullet point it, if you will.
Yeah.
And was there anything in particular that kind of shocked you that you weren't expecting?
Right. So definitely the headache thing going away was a big shock for me. I'll still get a headache from time to time, but I feel like it's more stress related, that kind of thing. And we're living in a stressful time right now. So I find that if it's an extra stressful day, I'll get a headache. But I used to get 2 or 3 headaches a week, and now it's maybe 1 a month, that kind of thing. So that was a surprising thing. I did have some others. Muscle building. It's easy these days. I got lots of protein in me, and I got lots of energy. That's the other thing I should mention. My wife and I almost right away noticed that we've got more of a steady energy instead of spikes and valleys. It's steady energy, and I find it's very easy to skip meals if I need to, right? If I don't get to the point every day where I'm just like so hungry, I have to eat right now. Along with that, I would say I don't have the spikes in like blood sugar. You can get sort of dizzy and shaky with a blood sugar problem. I don't find that ever happens anymore. And bloating. So that's another surprising thing. I never knew that sort of that normal full feeling that you would have on a sort of a normal diet was actually bloating. So every once in a blue moon, we'll cheat a bit. Everyone cheats, or they choose to cheat, right? So one example I have is at Thanksgiving weekend, we knew we were going to have 2 Thanksgiving turkey dinners. And so, of course, being carnivore, you think, okay, turkey, and maybe I'll add some sausage or ground beef to it. But I decided, let's see what happens if I just go all out. I had the potatoes and the gravy and the dressing and everything. I felt like garbage. Oh my word. And so did my wife. And it's like, okay, that was the first one. Now, it's only a day later. Let's try the second turkey dinner, and we'll just do meat, and we'll see. And we felt way better, way better. So that was sort of a clear indicator to us that if you go back to the old way, you're gonna feel it and you're gonna pay for it. And we did. So that's yet again another reason. Oh, and my wife's pain came back to her foot, like with one meal where she did some pretty major cheating. But yeah, the snoring one is, my wife loves that. No more snoring from me. I just want to make sure I cover everything, because there were some, as I was starting to write down notes, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that, like my stomach and all that kind of stuff. But for sure, we're going to stick with it. Like, there's no reason for us to go back, because yeah, it's misery to be sore and upset every day. Yeah, I think the main thing for me is it's delicious. I just love the taste of meat, and I'm happy to eat meat all the time. I'll say one of the other things that was sort of a surprise is sort of the pushback I got from a lot of my coworkers and friends and family and stuff, right? People just push back and, oh, what about this? What about that? What about this? And I'm like, 2 years in, the proof's in the pudding. Here I am in the best shape of my life. I'm almost 50 years old. I'm in the best shape of my life. Feel better, sleep better, just overall in really great health. And I'm like, don't knock it till you try it, people. Like, give it a shot and see how you feel, right? Because I find the results come pretty fast, right? Especially if it's pain related, they come pretty fast. I know everyone talks about sort of the digestion issues that everyone fights with at the early point, the transition period. Just get over that and then see how you feel. So it's been great for us. We just love it.
Well said. Well said. I could not agree with you more. Well, Paul, it's been a pleasure. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your story.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Bye, Paul.
Bye.